A renowned inventor and creator, Joseph Beattie brought much innovation to the London and South Western Railway in the second half of the 19th century. He was appointed locomotive engineer in 1850 and began a period of 27 years of great experimentation and modification for the railway. Perhaps Beattie's most famous contribution to the LSWR is his well tank engines that remained in service, admittedly with several modifications, until the early 1960s, almost 100 years after they first took to the tracks. Beattie created the well tanks in response to the rapidly expanding network and the consequent increase in passenger traffic. The well tank 240s were distinctive engines, holding their water supply in tanks fixed between the frames, usually placed under the footplates. They had 5 feet 6 inch coupled wheels and 15 inch by 20 inch cylinders. The majority of these locomotives were built by Bayer Peacock & Co. Well tanks looked like traditional Victorian locomotives with their tall chimneys and high-domed fireboxes, but in reality, they represented a move forward in design. From delivery in 1863, Beattie's well tanks were put into use on suburban services out of Waterloo, where they served the railway well. 50 well tanks had been made by the time Beattie died in 1871, and by 1875 there were 85 operating on the railway. However, by the 1880s, when William Adams had taken over as superintendent, the well tanks were increasingly moved from London to depots in the country, where their limited fuel capability proved to be a hindrance. In 1893, well tank number 248 was sent to the far-flung Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway in the southwest of the country, as their only locomotive was beyond repair. The line predominantly carried China clay along the 7-mile main line and up the 6.5-mile branch from Camel Valley to Wenford Bridge. In 1895, number 298 took over, shortly joined by numbers 314 and 329. And they set to work carrying empties from Wadebridge up the line to Wenford Bridge and then back in the evening with full loads of China clay. These locomotives performed admirably and served the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway for a further 6 decades. By 1962, they were the oldest locomotives in main-line service with BR. Today, number 30587 is still in operation on the Bodmin and Wenford Railway. The Bodmin and Wenford Railway can proudly claim to be the only remaining standard gauge railway in Cornwall still frequented by steam. Born out of the struggle between the GWR and the LSWR to reach Bodmin first, the Bodmin and Wenford Railway opened on May the 27th, 1887. The process began in 1834 with the opening of the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway, alerting the Great Western and the London and South Western that there was a valuable market to be serviced in Cornwall. British railway networks had been expanding rapidly throughout the first half of the 19th century, leaving only the furthest reaches of land untapped. The LSWR was the quickest to react, purchasing the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway in 1846 with the intention of linking it to their main line into the county. Meanwhile, a smaller company, the Cornwall Railway, was in the process of linking Plymouth and Falmouth for local traffic. The project was backed and later taken over by the GWR and could be manipulated to provide direct competition with the LSWR's main line from Cornwall to London. Though the line would not run directly through Bodmin due to financial restraints, it would run within 5 miles, leaving the opportunity to create a branch line at a later date. It was this branch line that would eventually become the Bodmin and Wentford Railway. The GWR wasted no time, acquiring the correct permission to start building the new line in August 1882. 5 years later, the first stretch was complete, linking the Bodmin Road on the GWR-run Cornwall Railway to the centre of Bodmin. Just 1 year later, the line was extended again to reach Boscarn Junction on the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway. The GWR had beaten the LSWR in linking to Bodmin by 8 years. The railway hosted an array of steam locomotives as it served passenger and freight trains, though cargo initially had to be swapped to another train at Bodmin Road until the Cornwall Railway's broad gauge could be brought into line with the standard gauge of the GWR's extension. GWR small prairies were common on the line. However, the engine that seemed to capture the hearts of enginemen and passengers alike was the Beattie well tank, initially built for the arch-enemy, the LSWR. The little engines first appeared on the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway towards the end of the 19th century to help with china clay duties. Their short wheelbase and gutsy turn of speed made them perfect matches for the tightly curved and steep rails of the picturesque Cornish lines. Mike Lee met up with former Wadebridge fireman Tony Hallworth.
I'm standing in front of an engine that's a very, very remarkable survivor, and I'm joined by Tony Hallworth, who was a Wadebridge fireman and driver, I think, for quite a few years. Tony, is that right?
Take away the driver, I was a fireman.
You were a
cleaner
fireman.
And fireman.
Right, and of course this engine, a Beattie well tank, has an absolutely unique association with Wadebridge, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Because the first ones came down here in 1888, I think?
Yeah, the first one was 1888.
And they worked on the Wentford Bridge branch until 1962?
62, that's correct, yeah.
And I think you had something to do with that in the end.
Yes, yeah.
So what did you do in connection with the Beattie?
Well, obviously I started cleaning them, and because from 1960 you were fast track, and then I went out on the yard, started on the yard with this, and on the Wentford. So I've got a little bit of a thing with her.
And of course the Wentford Bridge branch was originally part of the Bodmin and Wadebridge Railway,
yes, right,
which opened back, I think, 1834.
Yeah.
Had no connection with the London South Western at all,
no.
but I think they bought it in 1846, didn't they? When they were only near Salisbury, I think, or somewhere.
That's it, that's right, yes, yes.
So they sent one of these engines down here, and it was working in isolation, I suppose, then at that time.
Absolutely, and I've read that it came by sea.
Yeah, because it would have been broad gauge connection if there was any, not standard gauge. Yeah, so and they worked away on their own there right up into the 1960s, particularly with the Wentford Bridge branch.
Yes.
And I remember it with enormous affection because it was a beautiful piece of railway line. And what did a day going to Wentford entail?
Your engine was prepared for you. So you came on, you signed on, and you went on her and you got her ready, whatever you had to do, push your fire out, and you went out on the train and you left. And you sauntered out to Dunmere.
Yeah.
If there was any shunting that had to be done there, you shunted there. Then you had to wait for the branch train to go up through.
That was to Bodmin North.
That's right.
Yeah.
When that one had cleared from the signal box, the signalman gave the shunter the key for the Wentford branch, and you went up, dropped the shunter off. He pulled the ground frame, opened the gate because it was always a gate gated. You went in over and you pulled up as far as the main road, just short of the main road.
Right.
The shunter then had to lock you in, walk back to Boscorn box with the key, and then walk back again. And when he came back, then you proceeded on up to Pencara Woods, took water, and then obviously whatever shunting had to be done en route, which was Dunmere Wharfs, Tresarat Wharfs, or Ellen Wharf, and Tresarat, and then up to Wentford.
And of course Wentford was a China clay dry, and then up to the actual terminus beyond that.
That's right.
And of course it was a beautiful piece of railway, but I remember it wasn't quite run like, let's say, the rest of the railway network, because I remember pulling up to that crossing and some parcels being delivered to a nearby house, and a lady bringing a pot of tea out and sitting on the wall there and having a cup of tea in the sunshine till the shunter came back.
That's it. We used to do a grocery service or if they were walking beside the track, a lady with a bag, you pick her up and you take her down to do her shopping.
Yes.
So it was all good stuff. Yeah.
So this talk of community rail franchises is rather old hat on the Wentford Bridge branch.
That's right. Yes.
And the other thing I seem to remember is that a certain amount of fishing used to be done in the River Camel occasionally.
We used to do a little bit of fishing at the right time of the year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was, to somebody from the Midlands, it was a very, very different kind of railway.
That's it.
So when you got up to Wentford, I think they had a Scotch block across the track, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
They unlocked that to let you in, presumably.
Yeah, you unlock that, and when you were up past or finished on the shunting, then you were locked in again, and that had to be unlocked before you came back down through again.
Yeah.
In case you had runaways.
They did some shunting with a tractor up there as well, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, they had their own, well, just an ordinary tractor with a
beam on it,
beam, and they push their own trucks around. But it was, I mean, these old girls used to struggle a bit because you get clay on the rails.
Very slippery.
And it's a local that you can't rush. You got to let her find her own feet, and but it was they used to, but like a dry rail, they're phenomenal what they would shift.
Yeah. Well, bearing in mind they were built for commuter traffic originally, weren't they, in London?
Yes,
it was a very, very strange use for them.
That's right. And of course, you see, we used to, when we went up to Wentford Bridge, you had wagons in front of you as well as behind.
Yes.
So you were sandwiched.
Yeah.
And you put them up there, and then you left the rear train, then you shunted the others wherever they wanted to go, up underneath the gantry and
in the yard.
Yeah.
And of course, in actual fact, the clay traffic wasn't just in sheeted wagons, I mean, which nowadays tend to be called clay hoods. They used to have bag clay in vans as well, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, that was underneath the awning. As you came in, there used to be a big Nissanati place.
Yeah.
And then there was an awning come across, and the trucks used to be underneath it, and they used to drop them down when they when they filled one, they dropped them down.
Because the key thing with China clay was that it must not get wet. Because that would ruin it, wasn't it? So it's quite a specialist traffic in its own way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry.
You know, like the bag clay was always like very fine dust, but some that went in the open 13 tonners, I mean, that would just come off the pans, and they throw it then over and throw it straight in the truck. So you could have great slabs of it.
So it was a very routine, but I suspect never a boring job going to Wentford Bridge.
No, every day was different.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
It was a delightful job, and I should think you're delighted this engine's back here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Never ever thought that I'd see her again. Because I took two away to be scrapped when the 1366s came.
Yeah.
These stayed for a while until they done clearance tests and what have you with them. And then it came that these had to go, and I took two away. And well, there you go. I never thought you'd ever see it again.
Yeah. Well, I'm delighted because, like you, I never thought I'd see it again.
No.
And of course, there are very few well tank engines anyway, and of course these have the well tank between the frame and at the back of the footplate.
That's right.
And of course that water filler in the woods at Pencarrow I thought was magical because like a trough and try and aim it in the filler at the back.
That's right.
And I believe that number 6, not this engine but the one that was scrapped in actual fact, number 6, that was more difficult to fill, was it not?
Yeah. Our filler used to be a good 6 inches higher than these, if not a bit more. So if you, I mean this one, if you stand alongside of it, you can't see it.
Right.
8.6 you could see it, because it was more pronounced.
Yeah.
So that was really the reason. But I have been up there with her.
Yeah.
On not that many occasions.
Because usually number 6 used to get used as the station pilot at Weybridge, and it also ran local trains occasionally to Bodmin North, didn't it, I think?
Yeah, and up here as well.
Well, on these gradients, that must have been quite an experience, I should think. Yeah, because the normal motive power was Adams O2s, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Now, Tony, obviously, an engine that is, well, getting on for 130 odd years old is a very different kettle of fish to prepare to a modern engine, and even to the pannier tanks, I would think.
Yes.
And this has got Allen link motion, has it not?
It has, yes. Yeah.
Which of course is a very old-fashioned valve gear. So what's involved in preparing the engine?
Well, I mean, obviously it's more or less the same as any other loco to prepare. I mean, you've got your oiling points and you've got your outside loops on the slope box, which is similar to the O2s.
Yeah.
So you know, we were all brought up with it really. The Allen valve gear is the most difficult because you've got to get underneath to do the bottom of the link. One little quirk, the small end, is just a little hole. So it doesn't hold any lube whatsoever really. It's like when you do a trip, you stop and you oil it again. All it is a hole, and you just fill it in there. That's all there is to the small end. You've got these boxes for your front wheels, pony, and you've got your rods. Axle boxes is there, and the slide bar is there, and the spindle loop's in there. And you've got the steam brake on the footplate and the axle boxes on the footplate. It's quite simple really. It's a lot easier than a pannier tank.
Yes, and the well tank doesn't get in the way?
No, you'll be surprised. Once you're underneath, it's quite snug.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can't be bad.
Yeah.
How did you find the pannier tanks compared with the well tanks on work in the branch?
More water capacity.
Yeah.
Bags more power.
Yeah.
A lot more grip. We'll give them that. But no, they were good engines.
Good engines.
Yes.
In 1962, a visit by filmmaker Ivo Peters to Salisbury Motive Power Depot coincided remarkably with that of Beattie well tank number 30587. The locomotive, just withdrawn from traffic, was on its way from Wadebridge to Eastleigh and stopped over at Salisbury Shed for servicing. This little engine, dating from 1874, was of course destined to be saved and is now part of the National Collection. Ivo christened this shot of the loco with a 9F, David and Goliath. On the 9th of July 1960, a small celebration was held at Exeter Central Station to mark the 100th anniversary of the Salisbury to Exeter line. The star of the show was the Beattie well tank number 30587, specially brought up from the Wentford Bridge mineral line in Cornwall. Making up the modest display of motive power was the Adams radial tank number 30582 from the Lyme Regis branch, and a Merchant Navy Pacific number 35003 Royal Mail. Built in 1874, number 30587 was one of 88 well tanks from Bayer Peacock in Manchester. The locomotive was as close as the organisers could get to a typical passenger engine of the 1860s. Paired with a two-coach set from the Yeovil Town branch, number 30587 ran a period passenger train into Exeter Central Station. For this demonstration run, passengers and crew alike donned Victorian period costume, which perhaps made the Beattie, with its 1957 livery, a little incongruous. The Beattie well tanks made a distinctive and popular class. The restoration of number 30587 will ensure that they are able to provide an example of Victorian inspiration and ingenuity for many years to come.